Few who knew what might be learned, foolish enough to put their whole heart on show and reveal their feelings to the crowd below. Mankind has always crucified and burned. Chapter 1. The Genre Shift. Squid Game 2 is good fun. Don't expect Season 1. Don't expect it to be the best thing you've ever seen. But if you want a transgender woman wielding an assault rifle, Lee Byung-hun breaking necks and kicking ass, and more of those ridiculous MC Escher stares as a backdrop, it ain't bad entertainment. It's kind of like The Matrix number 2. It's a reasonable follow-up that obviously fails to live up to the hype and the expectations carried by the enormous success of the original. But if this were the first in the series and we could somehow forget what came before, I'm sure Season 2 of Squid Game would be spoken about in better terms. Gi-hun, played by Jong-jae, is now our red-pilled hero bent on revenge. He's the new Neo. He's not only trying to take down the agents, he's intent on breaking down the entire system itself. He's looking for the architect of the Matrix. That he now shoots assault rifles with amazing accuracy is just another addition. It's kind of like how Ridley Scott's Alien was all scary, gripping horror, and then James Cameron's Alien said, screw that, we're going to start blowing stuff up. Squid Game seems to be going the same way. Some of its characters are brilliant, some less so, but the key idea is the genre shift. Now, the Predator series did the opposite when going from John McTiernan's 1987 romp of Gatling guns and teams of juiced-up jungle warriors to Stephen Hopkins' 1990 exploration of lethargic inner-city cops with barely a firearm to call upon. Now, I'm not saying Squid Game is on the same level as either Alien or Aliens or Predator or The Matrix, but if you know those movies, and if you know how they differ between the first one and the second one, that's how Squid Game Season 1 and Season 2 feel to me. Squid Game 1 was claustrophobic as hell, with an oppressive terror waiting to close in on it. Squid Game 2 is expansive and filled with assault rifles and killers, people spraying lead and using walkie-talkies to move on position. It's kind of like the later series of Lost, with people uttering those famous memeable lines, "We have to go back," or Sigourney Weaver, driven by nightmares, mustering up the courage to once more take on the beast that killed everyone she knew last time. It is really no surprise that writer Dong-hyuck is in his early 50s because, even though he's Korean, I'm sure, like me, he grew up with a lot of these influences. I mean, the Matrix one is actually explicitly referenced in the second episode of this series. The Recruiter and Sebyok. Gong-yu as the Recruiter is brilliant at the start of Squid Game 2. You watch it for him and him alone. He just demands your attention and has you wondering what the hell is going on. That they put this in Tapgo Park just really adds to the beauty of it. I almost wish they had abandoned the whole Squid Game Season 2 thing and just done a spin-off with this character, taking the thing in a whole new direction, because that's how good Gong-yu is here. Yes, they try to present us with striking visual images like Jong-jae being naked, which is completely unnecessary and he's covered in blood, but it's still Gong-yu and his different shaped eyes that bring us in. There's one moment when they're playing Russian roulette and you can just see how much more dynamic and capable he is of taking you places with his acting. You believe him, you're there with him. He's the bad guy, but you don't want him to die because you just want to keep watching him. And that his eyes are different shapes, that's just amazing. It's brilliant how they are presented in an unadulterated fashion on screen. They don't try to hide this. Instead, they make you aware of it. You can't miss them. And in a world full of Korean movies, dramas, and music videos with perfectly beautiful people, the fact that Gong-yu has imperfections is, paradoxically, what makes him more handsome than everyone else. Just give us more of that guy. He's what we want to watch. Now, in Season 1, it was Sebyok, the North Korean defector, played by Jung Ho-yeon. She dominated every scene she was in, particularly Episode 6, the first season's high point. That was a huge kick in the balls, an emotional roller coaster that stays with you days afterwards. Now, despite Sebyok's hard exterior, you can see underneath that she has layers and depth. She's from a bad country, in a dangerous game, but she's a good person. And it's undeniable to me that Sebyok should have won Season 1. That was the character that we were all rooting for. So her eventual death, it felt unjust, particularly the way they did it. Gi-hun winning, it was just too damn predictable. It was vanilla. It was what we expected. And Gi-hun winning almost undermines the whole message of the drama, I think. But just imagine for a second that Sebyok, the North Korean defector, had won. What kind of ideological message would that have sent? What would that have done in Cold War South Korea if, in this drama, a North Korean defector from an enemy communist state defeats the game of capitalism? Oh my God, that would have been a huge fuck you to the system. That would have been powerful. We would have been talking about ideology once more instead of this Fukuyaman world we inhabit. That would have been a real ending. Not just because we like Sebyok, not just because of Jung's acting, but because of the genuine discussion that it would have prompted at the end. It would have done something different. The Hunger Games, Snowpiercer, AOC's dress, and everything else just shows how super popular it is to criticize the capitalist world. Multi-billion-dollar companies fall over themselves to tell us how rigged the system is and to rally against wealth inequality while they make bank. Squid Game 1 flinched at the last moment. Instead of holding true to its critique of capitalism, it indulged in fantasy and gave us this ridiculous ending that was never more emphasized by the red hair that it gave Gi-hun. And if only it could have held true, there would have been something worthwhile. Instead, it produced another in a long line of anti-capitalist material that further reifies the capitalist system, providing our catharsis for us and proving that Mark Fisher was probably right all along. So season 1 was a bit too predictable. It had this moment towards the end where it could have crushed it and become something so special, but it didn't. And I guess that's kind of what we expect in the modern world. But I can't help but wonder, what might have happened were Park Chan-wook or Bong Joon-ho creating this story? They would have done something far different, something messed up, unpredictable, just like real life and less like fantasy. You only need to watch their movies to understand that. That Sebyok is missing in season 2 is a huge void. Some of that is filled by Gong-yu, but unfortunately only temporarily. He contains so much on-screen charisma that as soon as he's gone, and he's gone very early on, you feel a sense of emptiness. Gi-hun. So instead of Gong-yu, we get Gi-hun played by Jong-jae, the protagonist of this whole Squid Game. And his change between season 1 and season 2 is kind of a reflection of the whole season changes. As the talking gold pig tells us in episode 2 in the back of the limo, Gi-hun's way of words has now improved. He now uses metaphors and analogies to criticize the capitalist world. He moralizes. He speaks from a sandbox. In that sense, he's no longer the everyman that we can relate to. Instead, he's now akin to a demagogue. He's closer to a Thanos from Avengers than a Tom, Dick, or Harry. He's a man with a plan to bring down the world, and he's got the words and the skills to do so. And this is very different from what we were used to. In season 1, we saw him in various situations. We saw him when he has money. We saw him when he has no money. We saw him when he was stealing. We saw him when he was generously giving gifts to other people. So we had this fully rounded character. We understood that he wasn't an archetype. He wasn't just 100% selfish or 100% selfless. Rather, perhaps for a Marxist analysis, his behavior, his values, and his actions were determined by how much money he had at the time. And that's an idea that we get repeated in Bong Joon-ho's Parasite. It's easy to be kind if you're rich. It's much harder to be kind if you are poor. We realize, therefore, that Gi-hun is fundamentally affected by the amount of money he has, and that gives us not only an understanding of him, but also of ourselves, of human nature, and the effects that capitalism and the world can have on us. And this seems to be missing from season 2, especially at the beginning. Now Gi-hun is driven, but only by one purpose. He exists in a single way. He's focused, he's motivated, but he's not as affected by the world around him as much. He's become more of a caricature. He's something like Liam Neeson's role in Taken. He's just out to get revenge, and that's interesting. But it's not quite as interesting as season 1. And at the same time, the philosophy also becomes more explicit than interpretive. When Gi-hun is in the limo, the talking pig, which is, some deep symbolism, it specifically references the matrix and which pill people believe themselves to be taking in society. And as the first game starts, Gi-hun tries to explain to the other contestants the nature of the reality they are now facing. However, He looks and sounds crazy to those who hear him, and one immediately thinks of Plato's allegory of the cave and the prisoner's response to the one who has seen the light. Gi-hun is now taking on a religious nature, becoming akin to Neo and Jesus. You might even suggest that his efforts to get upstairs to the front man is to find the truth, to get closer to God, or even to ascend to heaven himself. Korean society and the others. The ragtag team of the transgender person, the pregnant woman, and the old lady who survived the Korean War with her deadbeat son is a great set piece. It's genuinely emotional when they finally get round the game around the rainbow with those 6 little tasks, and you can't help but be caught up in the spectacle. You feel what they feel, the scene works, there's this collective spontaneous joy, and it's brilliant. And it's a shame that these characters too, like Gi-hun, they're a bit more like caricatures and labels than they are actually individuals. They are an archetype, almost chosen to check off a box what would be an interesting person to put inside this situation. And if you live here in Korea, or if you pay attention to Korean news and society, a lot of the themes and characters are almost just too on the nose. They're basically just reflecting issues in modern Korean society, and that makes it interesting, but it also makes it at the same time as if they're just looking at lists from a newspaper. It also very much roots Squid Game in the current age. This means that it will probably seem very dated in a few years, because when you make something that is timely, it's less likely to become timeless. And too many of the characters in Squid Game 2 are timely. You have the transgender character with a military background not being accepted by society, and this shows us the story of Byung-hun. Born a man, she had a sex change to become a woman, and then, as a result of this and other complications, was not allowed to complete her mandatory military service. She ultimately, sadly, took her own life. In Squid Game 2, you have the crypto scam artist that takes everyone's money and then tries to run away, of course echoing Do Kwon, who's wanted by authorities for taking amounts of money I honestly can't even comprehend. You have the failed rapper who got busted for drugs, and what, in an amazing piece of cinema, is played by a rapper who got busted for taking drugs. How fun is that? In Squid Game 2, you get a shaman who seemingly starts a cult and scares the shit out of you. And these stories are all over Korean media. They're especially linked to positions of power and influence among the rich and famous. But you see, if they wanted to do something truly progressive with these characters, make them something beyond just these caricatures, they would have subverted expectations rather than reinforce them. Because that's what Squid Game 2 does. It accentuates stereotypes and it doesn't challenge them. It becomes conservative instead of progressive. The transgender character is a good person. The drug-taking rapper is a bad person. Wow, what an original perspective for our modern world. But just imagine had they twisted that. Think about what the reaction would have been then. Imagine how seeing that played out would have challenged our own expectations and notions. Just think if the shaman had had some kind of genuine vision. Imagine the Korean-American drug taker was actually a decent person who just liked getting high and smoking weed when making music. Imagine that the transgender character was seen to be manipulative or selfish and not fundamentally a good person. That would be a real drama. Instead, we are just spoon-fed the same narrative that we always get. There is a subplot of people having organs sold, and that doesn't go anywhere. I'm not interested in that yet. And they show us crosses being drawn on coffins, and we have this collection of police and thugs looking for an island on boats. Also, mega boring. It doesn't go anywhere. We don't want them. We don't need them. Every time they came on screen, I lost interest. The only consolation being seeing Oh Dal-soo. My favourite role of his today is when he plays Talugu in Ode to My Father, and here in Squid Game 2 he plays the mysterious ship captain, and you just know something is up with him because he's good, he's ruggedly handsome. You know that he stinks of soju and fish, but he has expensive watches. Everyone else on the boat is just destroyed by his acting, and every other character in the storyline becomes forgettable. All of these whole subplots are just so, unfortunately, forgettable. Honor among thieves. I didn't lose interest with Lee Byung-hun. Having the frontman played by him on the inside kind of makes it like Saw. It's playing a game and everything's being recorded and seen from the inside, and this is a fun twist on season 1, where in that one the puppet master was in there from the start but we didn't know. In season 2 the puppet master is in there again But now we know, but nobody else does. And so we can see him play with things internally, controlling it from the inside. But what's interesting about this frontman, apart from Lee Byung-hun's great acting, is that he also puts his life on the line. He doesn't have any kind of deus ex machina to survive this. If he dies, he dies. And you can feel this, especially when he breaks that guy's neck during the conclusion of the Mingle game. And Gong-yu, the recruiter, does the same thing. He also plays by the rules in the face of death. Only for him, the game of Russian roulette with Gi-hun ends the wrong way. But both of these examples make you think that although these guys are messed up, at least they have some sense of honor. They are, in a way, more honorable than some of the contestants who they are trying to cheat. It's almost as if they have some good points and bad points. But there was one thing that annoyed me. Gi-hun eventually learned in season 1 that one of the contestants was a plant, and not just a plant, basically the guy who orchestrated the whole thing. So why doesn't he assume the same is happening here? How doesn't he get that Lee Byung-hun, this mad, handsome, charismatic dude, the one who casts the deciding vote to carry things on, contestant number 001 for God's sake, might be just a little bit suspicious? Now Gi-hun might be good, he might be super smart, he might be able to talk well and shoot machine guns now, but he's obviously not super good. Choi Sung-hyun, T.O.P from Big Bang, is a brilliant, coked-up psycho villain. He annoys you at first, but you slowly come to terms with the beauty of his performance. And having someone say skirt and quoting raps while people fear for their lives is just brilliant, brilliant juxtaposition. His face is constantly in close-up. You get to see every hair of his eyebrows, see his mouth twitch. You can basically smell his breath. His greatest moment for me comes when the characters are playing the Mingle game. The contestants spin round and round on a central revolving platform and then have to team up in a certain number before entering a door in order to live. Now, the tension in this scene is real. You now know that about half of the people don't want to be there and are just going to be wiped out by masked killers. The children's song playing as they spin just makes everything more freaky. It's a lullaby before your brains are blown out. Nice. And then there's Thanos, played by T.O.P. He's all high on drugs. He's dancing. There's this superb long shot where you see everybody just frozen in fear as they spin round, wondering will they live or die. And you can make out one contestant just bouncing around like a lunatic, and you know exactly who it is. It's Thanos. It's T.O.P. It's just a brilliant, brilliant performance from him. Now, there's obviously a lot of K-pop fans who are angry about Big Bang or this performance. We get it. We know that anti-fans are a huge part of that industry. And there are people that go out of their way to drag any member of a group that's not the one they stan. And yes, there are going to be some people that don't appreciate T.O.P's performance because they'll want something dark, brooding, and serious because they think that makes for intelligent drama. But if I'm going to watch people's heads be blown off for 7 hours, I at least want some jokes in between. Quentin Tarantino knows this, and that's why there are always eccentric characters in his movies amidst the violence. Thanos, despite the whole rap angle, feels like he could have come from a Tarantino movie. He's a goddamn movie character. He makes everyone else feel insignificant. I'm sure he was also probably channeling some of the media abuse he received for smoking weed a decade or so ago. Now he gets to let everything out and give a middle finger to the media by playing a drugged up rapper, and boy, does he do it well. The undisputed star of season 2 alongside Gong-yu so far. It's good. It's not amazing. Just like the change from Alien to Aliens. Just like the change from Predator to Predator 2. Just like Matrix to Matrix 2. And just like how Lost continued. At least there's something different going on. And while we might, just want to relive and rewind Squid Game season 1 again and see Ali's missing fingers and Sebyok's amazing performance, we can't do that. Instead, we've got this. And maybe it's because my expectations were really, really low. I didn't even know why they were making this. I enjoyed it. It was pretty good. And in the modern world, I don't think pretty good is a bad thing, especially because of all the hype that surrounded this. And that's Squid Game 2. Go check it out. Let me know what you think. Let me know how much you like T.O.P in this. Tell me how good is Gong-yu, Lee Byung-hun, and of course, Oh Dal-soo.